On this episode of Action Timelines, I'm stretching the definition of the word action to include the Rocky series. That's right, in honor of the release of Creed 2 coming up, I figured it would be a good time to check out these movies, which are mostly dramas, but I figured it was a good time to see if the continuity and timeline work within these series. And let me tell you, you can say what you want about horror movies, but wait till you see this continuity. The bell goes off in 1976 with the original Rocky, which starts in November of 1975, and we meet Rocky Balboa, the Italian stallion, a struggling boxer. He's smitten with pet shop employee Adrian and works as mob muscle, and if you're mostly down with the horror timelines, you'll notice that the mob boss is a maniac. And the gym he trains at apparently has a strict no kissing rule in the locker room. Okay. The gym's run by Whack 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 Mickey, and Rock hangs with Adrian's brother Paulie, while the heavyweight champion of the world is Action Jackson, and he decides to give a chance at the title to a local underdog fighter for his bicentennial fight. We get our first Yo, Adrian, and he basically won't let her leave until she has sex with him. Kids, don't take dating tips from Rocky. They become an item, and Rock starts training and beats his meat, and that famous music finally kicks in. And look, I know Action Timelines is the wrong place for this film, because if you've never seen the first Rocky and you're expecting some boxing movie, you should know that this is almost entirely a character drama, focusing on the lives of Rocky and Adrian and the people around them more than anything else. The fight finally arrives, and I should point out, is set on January 1st, 1976. So everything you've seen up until now, every scene takes place over only a month and 1 week. And Rocky is said to be 30 years old by the announcer. Oh, and earlier, Mickey says that he's 76. They duke it out, going back and forth until the final round, and Rock goes the distance. Apollo wins the fight, but Rocky wins Adrian's love and proves that he's not a bum, which is apparently the most important thing ever back in the 1970s. 3 years and a few Oscars later, 1979 brings us Rocky 2, which starts with a rather lengthy recap of the ending of the first one. So we're still in 1976, and Apollo angrily challenges Rock for a rematch, but he retires. He gets out of the hospital and proposes to Adrian, which, okay, fast work there, Rock. They get married, so some time passes, but it's still winter, so it's either a few months later or I guess the next winter, but I'm going to go with still 76. Rocky gets carried away with spending, and Adrian's pregnant, and this TV producer says they waited a couple of months for his swelling to go down, so we're just a few months away from the beginning of the film now, and it's definitely still in 1976, and April 8th, although this doesn't really look like a 6, but whatever. He goes back to grunt work and then finally agrees to a rematch for Thanksgiving Day and starts to train. Drama pops up as Adrian has the baby prematurely and goes into a coma, but she gets better, so he does his famous run again. We get the big fight, and it's a brutal match that leads to Rocky winning the championship title. Yo, Adrian! 3 more years go by, and 1982 finally gave us Rocky 3, which again shows us the ending of the last film and gives us the eye. Speaking of eyes, remember Rock's eye problem in the last movie? Well, forget all that. We see Rock win a series of fights, and magazine covers show the ending of 76, 77, and years past, judging from the age of his son, and B.A. Baracus shows up in the boxing world, and Rocky gets soft. Paulie says Rock gave him a job 3 years ago, so we're most likely in 79 here, and look, I'm not trying to be mean, but Rocky's intelligence level in the first 2 movies is really bottomed out, like, he's borderline mentally handicapped. But he seems pretty sharp here. And Little Jr. looks a little bit more than 3, that's for sure. Balboa fights a wrestler turned actor, turned cultural icon, Thunderlips. But look at this guy's mustache. Then this newspaper says that it's May 1982? That would make Rocky Jr. 6, which makes a little more sense. Rocky gets a statue and again says 3 years ago. So let's go with that newspaper being a misprint because Mickey says 3 years ago too, so 1979 it is. Apollo's an announcer now, and Rocky gets knocked out as Mickey succumbs to a heart attack. And here's where everything stops making sense. Mickey's headstone says that he died on August 15th, 1981, which would mean everyone else in the film can't keep track of years since that would be 5 years later, not 3. Also, it says he was born in 1905, which means he died at 76 years old, which, is how old he was in Rocky 1. When Clubber agrees to a rematch, this newscaster says Rocky's 34, which would make sense with this being 79 since he was 30 back in 1975. So that's that. 1979, and a wrong newspaper, and a wrong headstone. Apollo says Eye of the Tiger like 300 times. Paulie says racist things like 400 times, and trust me, you will never see a better scene of two grown men frolicking in the water. Most likely, since Mickey died in August, we're probably extended into early 80 for the rematch. We see the origin of all the fools being pitied, and the final fight only takes 3 rounds, and Rocky once again reigns supreme. But for the first time, the movie doesn't end with the fight, as Apollo rings the bell,
ding, ding,
and we never see the final fight. Another 3 years pass, and 1985 gave us Rocky IV, the best depiction of 1980s American-Russian relations that you can possibly imagine. And exploding boxing gloves show that we're a long way away from the character drama of the first film. We once again get a recap and the introduction of 80s Robot, and Rocky says that it's their 9th anniversary, so we're in 1985 now, 6 years after the last film. And we meet He-Man and Flava Flav's girlfriend. And Stallone at least seems like he's trying to be more like the character from the first 2 a bit, as he seems a bit dumber. And Apollo challenges Drago to an exhibition match, which is handled in Creed's trademark subtle styling. The fight doesn't go well for Creed as he's hit so hard that it kills him, and gets blood on Rock's nice Hugo Boss product placement. This newspaper confirms our date as 1985 as Rocky gives up his title to fight Ivan, and his plates expire in April of 86, so yeah, 85. Rock then has a flashback montage as he reflects on his life, and his kid appears once while splashing in the ocean with Apollo shows up like 3 times. He goes to Russia to train, and after like 6 training montages, I'm not joking, like 20 minutes in the middle of this movie is training montage. The final fight occurs on Christmas Day, and it's pretty brutal, and in possibly the most unrealistic part of any of these movies, the entire Russian crowd starts rooting for Rocky. He wins the fight and gives a speech that basically ends the Cold War, which is actually historically accurate. This is actually the way that happened. Five years passed, and in 1990 we saw Rocky V, a change in format for the series. Once again, we get a recap, and we pick up right afterwards here, so it's the end of 1985 still, and the effects of fighting take their toll. And Rocky Jr. is suddenly a few years older. And we meet Don King wannabe George Washington Duke, and Rocky loses his entire fortune due to a shady accountant, and then is diagnosed with brain damage, and people talk about the fight as if it were recent, but we're most likely into 1986 now, and Rock retires and sells off his house. It's possible that this takes place over time, but Rocky Jr.'s age doesn't really change, but it's snowy, so it's either still early 86 or later the year at the beginning of winter. The Balboas move back to the old neighborhood and takes over Mick's old gym and starts training a young fighter named Tommy Gunn. Rocky Jr. introduces himself to a girl as Robert, which would insinuate that it's his real name, and he's most likely he's Robert Jr., which would mean that Rocky is actually Robert as well, which is confirmed by non-film material, but this is the first in-film mention of this fact. Tommy starts fighting and winning, and it's obvious that a bunch of time passes, although Jr. doesn't really age, but I guess he's just catching up to his multi-year age spurt between movies. Duke's protege Kane becomes the new champ, and Tommy's courted by him, and again, more time passes as Tommy gets closer and closer to a title fight. Christmas Vacation is playing on TV, which came out in '89, so it wouldn't be on TV or video until at least Christmas '90, but that would place these scenes almost 5 years since the beginning of the movie, which doesn't really make any sense. Like, I think that some time has passed, and I think it's more likely that this is Christmas '87 than still in '86. I think it's possible from the age of Rocky Jr. this is supposed to all happen over the course of 1 year, but it seems really unlikely that Rocky went from being a huge mega superstar to being at the bottom of the barrel with no options, and then climbing his way back up as a manager of an up-and-coming superstar all in less than 1 year. So let's roll with '87, and we're in a universe that Chevy Chase had a vacation that he didn't go anywhere a few years earlier than ours. Tommy wins the title and snubs Rocky, but then challenges Rocky to a title match. Rock declines, and instead fights him in the street, and Rocky eventually knocks his mullet into an appropriate time period. And I should point out that Tommy's father figure beats him up after confessing earlier that his real father used to beat him. Rocky knocks out Duke and receives God's blessing, I guess, and then goes back to the steps. Rocky then retired for 16 years and didn't resurface until 2006 Rocky Balboa, which doesn't start with a recap for once. Instead, we see new fighter Mason Dixon, current champion of the world, and Rock's still in the old neighborhood in the same outfit, and Adrian died back in 2002. And Paulie's still around and says he took the tour the last 3 years, which is a tour of the neighborhood on the anniversary of their first date. So this is most likely 2005, since he would have taken the first tour in late 2002, then 03, and the third one being in 04. Little Robert's all grown up, but he's a hero now, and Rock has a restaurant named Adrian's. He meets up with Little Marie, the young girl he schools in the first movie, and Spider, the fighter Rocky fights in the first film, and decides to start fighting again. He's declared fit to fight, so remember that whole brain damage thing from the last film? Forget all that too. We're most likely extended into the beginning of 06 at this point, and he gets invited to participate in a charity exhibition with Dixon, and we finally get a training montage. Hitting the top of those stairs again, and soon it's fight night. Mike Tyson pops up and the fight begins, and Rocky goes the distance, and Dixon wins by split decision, and he says goodbye to Adrian. We take another break for 9 years, and in 2015 we see Rocky's return in Creed, which kicks off in 1998, and we meet young Adonis Johnson in a detention center and his mom, Mrs. Huxtable, who tells him that his father died before he was born, and his real last name is Creed. So that means that Adonis was born in either late 85 or early 86, so he's 12 or 13 here. And we flash to 2015 with the Human Torch 3.0, Underwood, Evans, Jordan. And he'd be either 29 or 30 now and wants to follow in his father's footsteps. He goes to Adrian's to ask Rocky to train him, meets another Marvel alum downstairs, and geez, now Paulie's dead? Back in 2012, which really has me sweating about the fate of Junior, and come to think of it, whatever happened to Paulie's robot? Is it dead too? We do find out that Junior moved away, explaining his absence, and they start training and fighting, and when word gets out that he's Creed's son, he books a championship fight. But Rocky's diagnosed with cancer. Before the big fight, Adonis gets the famous shorts, and the fight is brutal, but he goes the distance and knocks the champ down, but loses in decision, but wins the legacy, and they revisit the famous steps one last time. Which brings us to this year's Creed 2, which is no longer directed by Ryan Coogler, but features the return of Ivan Drago. In this film, Creed has to fight Ivan's son. That's right, the son of the guy that killed his dad. I have to admit, it looks a little less drama-y and a little more boxing movie-ish, so it kind of feels a little more like Rocky 3 than in Rocky Balboa. But let's take a look and see how this one turns out, and hopefully the continuity will match up. So I know this one got a little confusing, so let's do a quick recap. The first movie starts in November of '75 and extends to January 1st, 1976. The second film picks up immediately after it left off and extends throughout the whole year of '76, ending on Christmas Day. The third movie takes place 3 years later, ignore the newspaper and the tombstone, and possibly extends into the beginning of 1980. The fourth film begins in early '85 and ends on Christmas Day, also in '85. The fifth film picks up right afterwards and goes through 1986 and possibly extends out to Christmas of 1987. Balboa starts in 2005 and ends possibly in 2006, and Creed certainly and definitively takes place in 2015. So there you have it. It's 7 movies. Continuity, kind of a mess. I mean, obviously, the continuity of the storyline kind of makes sense with everything, but they could not get those dates down. It seems as if script-wise they kind of had it together, but props-wise they did not. With a lot of the newspapers and headstones and all those things not making any sense, plus the, I'm sure, insistence of keeping Sage Stallone, Sylvester Stallone's real son, in the role of Rocky Jr., despite his aging, really contributed to those continuity issues. Overall, though, a really great series to watch. I loved all these movies, even Part 5. Part 5 is kind of the redheaded stepchild of the series. A lot of people don't care for it. I love it. It's really bad, but so much fun. So watch these movies. They're great movies. If you haven't seen them, I don't know why. Go watch them. They're fun and ridiculous and amazing. So check it out. Well, that's about it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed the Rocky series. You should. They're Oscar-winning films. They're great stuff. So go check those out, and go check out Creed 2 in the theater if this interests you, and let me know what you thought of this one down below, and what other movies you want to see and what other franchises you want. In the meantime, please also like and subscribe, do all those good things. If you want to link this to social media, please feel free. I always enjoy that. And then also check out my Patreon page. You can contribute to this page and help keep it going and keep this series of films going. These guys over here do. They contribute to my page, and I want to thank all of them. They're all amazing. And you guys are also amazing, too, for watching the videos and keeping it going. So thanks a lot, and I'll see you in another couple of weeks for another great video. Thanks, guys.